One morning, you wake up, and nothing feels wrong. But the milk is gone, the truck didn't come, and your neighbor just lost his job. That's how collapse begins in America. Not with fire, with silence.
Because of this trade war, the executive director goes on to say that this port of Los Angeles will be taking a massive hit.
The 10% tariffs on all other countries, including those in the Pacific Rim that we trade with, are also expensive. Now, as we talk about what happens closer to home on the docks, that means fewer job opportunities for longshoremen and truck drivers.
In California, entire shelves in Fresno stay bare for the third week. In Hawaii, a mother in Hilo limits her children to 1 glass of milk a day. In Utah, an elderly couple now drives 40 miles for their heart medication. 2.7 million jobs hang in the balance. But this isn't just about jobs. It's about what your family puts on the table tonight. And the question no one dares to ask aloud is, what if the port doesn't reopen? This video doesn't predict. It doesn't accuse. It simply reveals what's already unraveling. Quietly, slowly, dangerously. The content of this video is compiled from reputable sources and social observation perspectives. The goal is not to attack any organization, but to evoke a multifaceted picture where you, as the viewer, will have the right to reflect and form your own opinion. It doesn't begin with silence. It begins with a question. Why isn't the fertilizer here yet? That's what a farmer near Lubbock muttered while staring at the empty delivery bay behind his barn. Not panic, just uncertainty so thick it settled in the dust like morning fog. And when you live off the land, delay isn't just inconvenience, it's a fracture in rhythm. In May, more than 48 hours of average shipping delays swept across Dallas-Fort Worth's logistic hubs, according to Port of Los Angeles dispatch logs. Not because of weather, not because of labor, but because the cargo simply never arrived. Shipments rerouted, containers missing, delivery windows shattered. And as Texas watched trucks vanish from the horizon, local businesses began adjusting, not just their schedules, but their expectations. Home Depot stores across Austin reported back-to-back sellouts of basic equipment. Tractor Supply locations in rural towns began limiting purchases of replacement parts for plows and irrigation tools. That's not restocking, that's emergency buffering. The deeper danger is not in what's lost, but in what can no longer be relied upon. Texas agriculture operates on a system of just-in-time fulfillment, fine-tuned over decades. But when the spine of that system, the Port of Los Angeles, goes stiff, what happens isn't collapse, but a slow suffocation. Farms don't fail all at once. They delay, they reduce, and then one day, the fields just stay brown. What's worse is how this touches the everyday. Construction projects in suburbs of San Antonio paused, not for lack of labor, but because copper wire didn't make the trip inland. Hospitals in El Paso began seeking alternate vendors for surgical gloves. A parent in Midland wondered out loud if school lunch deliveries would face substitutes again. These aren't breakdowns, they're symptoms of a system that's holding its breath. Amazon has already begun quietly testing warehouse rerouting from Texas to Arizona, hoping to ease the jam. But with only so much shelf space and growing demand from multiple states, one has to ask, how many days of delay does it take before backup stops being enough? If Texas, home to the highways and farmlands that feed half the country, is beginning to pause, then what happens next may not be delay. It may be a deeper, quieter erosion. It's not the empty casino floors that raise questions. It's the sudden shrinking of the menu at a steakhouse just off the strip. No more imported wine, no fresh sashimi tonight. Supply issues, the waiter says softly, like it's a private matter. But to those paying attention, it feels more like an invisible countdown, one that's already ticking, somewhere behind the neon. Nevada doesn't scream when the system shifts. It whispers through changes in rhythm. A shipment from Asia that was expected next days still hasn't cleared the port. According to port traffic data, container volume into Henderson's warehouses dropped by 38% last month, a decline sharper than during any moment of the COVID crisis. But this time, there's no headline. Just a fracture in the backstage machinery that keeps Las Vegas dazzling. Behind every light show, there's a fragile ecosystem. Food deliveries choreographed to the hour, electronics flown in to dazzle high rollers, maintenance parts that keep machines running overnight. When even one of these arrives late, it reverberates through a system built on precision and promise. And now, those delays are creeping in. Quietly, consistently. The deeper concern isn't that tourists will notice, it's that workers already have. Cooks sent home early. Hotel technicians scavenging for backup batteries. A bartender said last weekend, "We're not short-staffed. We're short stuff." And that small shift, from performance to improvisation, might be what cracks the illusion first. To their credit, MGM Resorts has partnered with Cisco to increase local warehousing capacity and buffer key supplies for up to 14 days. But even that fix has a shelf life. With port traffic so heavily strained, restocking at scale becomes a game of roulette. Some days you win, some days you wait. So what happens if this pressure lingers? What if the 14-day buffer becomes 10, then 6, then just one Friday night without what was promised? Not a blackout, but a flicker. A small failure that reminds everyone how interdependent entertainment truly is on invisible infrastructure. And if Nevada, the place that runs on illusion, begins losing what fuels its reality, then what comes next might not blink. It might dim and not come back on. But the next state, it doesn't just rely on goods, it relies on hope. You might not notice it driving down the 405, but you will if you walk into a pharmacy in Fresno and hear the clerk say, "We're still waiting on that refill." You'll feel it when the shelves at your neighborhood Target have the same gap for 5 days in a row. California doesn't stop. It shudders, quietly, persistently. The Port of Los Angeles, once the proud artery of America's West Coast lifeblood, is now a fractured mirror reflecting delayed promise. With cargo volumes down and more than 40 ships unaccounted for in the Trans-Pacific corridor, every missed container becomes a missing piece of someone's daily routine. From tech components to over-the-counter meds, the absence is no longer theoretical, it's emotional. In Silicon Valley, major production teams have begun delaying internal rollouts. According to sources close to the Apple supply chain, several components expected from East Asia were paused indefinitely. Engineers call it working on assumptions. But behind that phrase lies tension, not in capability, but in certainty. What if the next batch doesn't arrive next week either? Outside of tech, the strain is more personal. Independent pharmacies in San Diego have started doubling their orders through smaller domestic vendors, trying to patch what once came steadily through Long Beach. A retired schoolteacher picking up her arthritis medication noticed the bottle was half full. "It's not a mistake," the pharmacist explained. "It's all we got." That's not inventory control. That's rationed resilience. Meanwhile, the workers behind the scenes, the lifters, drivers, dock crew, they're watching. Over 1.1 million jobs in California are tied, directly or indirectly, to port activity. And when the containers sit idle, so do careers. It's not about unemployment. It's about being stuck in neutral, waiting, watching, wondering. Walmart, attempting to stay ahead of the curve, has begun scaling up rail-based logistics from Texas, trying to redirect critical stock before local shortages take hold. But rail is slow, and Southern California doesn't run on slow. It runs on precision built on habit. When that rhythm breaks, everything feels just a little more vulnerable. If California, the state that feeds, ships, and fuels, begins to shiver like this, then maybe the next place won't tremble. It may simply freeze. And while California stares into its fractured mirror, the next state may find itself lost in the fog. It didn't start with snow. It started with silence. The kind that lingers when the harbour lights at Dutch Harbour don't flicker on at 4 a.m. When the first trawler captain radios in, "Still no packaging." This isn't winter delay. It's something deeper. A pause in the rhythm of a state that lives not by clock, but by cargo. When a single freighter from Seattle is held back in Los Angeles, the ripple reaches further north than most maps dare to imagine. In Anchorage, the fish processing lines stop mid-shift. Not because the fish aren't biting, but because the plastic wrappers, ice flake bags, and replacement valves aren't there. The plant foreman, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, glances at a clipboard filled with red markings. 3 days down, he mutters, and we're just getting started. Beyond the docks, the tension curls into places most Americans wouldn't expect. Fairbanks clinics waiting on surgical gloves. Village pharmacies where deliveries are already spaced 2 weeks apart. One nurse whispered, "We're rationing bandages. Again." And when the fishing season hits full swing, one more week of delay doesn't just mean less profit. It could mean missing the only paycheck for months. This isn't about running out. It's about being one shipment short of survival. A place where resilience isn't a word for marketing. It's what holds up the grocery shelves. But how long can resilience last when dependency runs deeper than the ocean floor? FedEx has floated the idea of a direct air bridge between Anchorage and Osaka, a bold move. But even one official side, you can't airlift an economy. The cost, the scale, the unpredictability, all loom too large. And for a region that's been promised solutions before, faith isn't in short supply, it's on hold. If Alaska grows colder in silence, the next state may not freeze. It might burn from within. Because not all collapses come with storms. Some begin in stillness. And the next one? It may echo with footsteps, but no place to go. It's not the heat that presses hardest on Phoenix these days. It's the stillness. The whir of machines once pulsed through Chandler's tech corridor like a desert heartbeat. But now, silence hangs like dust. At one of the state's largest semiconductor plants, the night shift was recently deferred indefinitely. Not because of demand, but because a shipment of micro-components, no bigger than your fingernail, never made it past the port of Los Angeles. This is not a tale of delay. It's a glimpse into a fragile rhythm unraveling. Nearly 70% of Arizona's high-tech imports still funnel through that single bottlenecked gate on the California coast. And when it halts, the ripple isn't small. It's a fault line. Stores like Fry's Electronics and Micro Center, once shelves of innovation, now feel like ghost exhibits. Customers wander through aisles not looking for the latest gadget, but simply anything that works. It's not just chips and screens. It's Arizona's quiet dependence on timing, on supply, on everything arriving just in time. And that's the danger. A system built for efficiency, not resilience. The once booming tech pride of the state now tiptoes on uncertainty. "We built fast," one quiet technician remarked, "but not far enough from risk." Intel, in a scramble to sidestep paralysis, has begun emergency negotiations to reroute supplies through Mexico. But the logistics aren't smooth, and the cost isn't just financial. When every component doubles in effort, it's not just production that suffers. It's trust, routine, and the illusion that we are in control. And maybe that's the hidden truth. The desert doesn't need water to become dangerous. It just needs the wrong kind of silence. If Arizona starts skipping a beat, the next place might not have the option to stall. It might simply snap. But don't look away yet, because what's unfolding next isn't about chips or cargo. It's about something far more fragile and closer to your kitchen table. It didn't begin with a crisis. It began with a whisper, a quiet sign taped to the door of a neighborhood Safeway in Salem. Restocking delayed. Check back next week. That was 3 weeks ago. Now the sign is faded, curling at the edges, and the shelves inside are emptier than memory. No alarms rang. No press conference warned the public. But in aisle after aisle, certainty began to thin like the last carton of milk. From Eugene to the outskirts of Bend, over 200 shipments of canned goods, frozen produce, and daily essentials were reportedly cancelled in May, not due to demand, but disappearance. These shipments once passed seamlessly through the port of Los Angeles. Now, rerouting takes weeks. And in the quiet absence, the rhythm of routine breaks down. Families who once relied on just enough have started hoarding again. Not out of panic, but instinct. One local mother whispered while scanning the freezer section, "It feels like COVID again," except no one's saying it out loud. The visible symptoms are small but haunting. Empty freezer aisles, handwritten out-of-stock signs, a surge in expired substitutes. The emotional toll, however, runs deeper. For older residents on fixed incomes, it isn't just about missing food. It's about the erosion of trust in something as simple as tomorrow's grocery list. And when familiar brands vanish without explanation, it creates a silence louder than any siren. Kroger, one of Oregon's leading supermarket chains, has launched a partnership with local farms to source directly from within the state. It's a lifeline, but not yet a solution. The scale needed to feed the full demand of a region isn't something that grows overnight. And while this shift to local resilience is inspiring, it also lays bare how fragile the old system really was. In Oregon, the danger isn't hunger, it's uncertainty. And when food fades quietly from sight, so too does the quiet confidence that things will be okay again. What if the next delay isn't just for groceries? What if it's for medicine, or water, or something we don't yet realize we've taken for granted? And still, there's another place. One where the trouble isn't on the shelf, but in the silence of a signal that never arrives. The first sign wasn't sirens or front-page headlines. It was the quiet shuffle of an older man at a pharmacy in South Salt Lake, clutching a white slip of paper. He wasn't asking for help. He was asking if the medication he needed might arrive before his next heartbeat missed a beat. In May alone, 1 in 5 small pharmacies across Salt Lake City and Provo reported shortages in common blood pressure medications, the kind most seniors take daily, without fail, as if timed with the sun. But now the sun rises and the medicine doesn't. Shipments once timed like clockwork are now delayed by an average of 9 days, held up somewhere between Asia and the backed-up cranes of Los Angeles. And when minutes matter, 9 days is not an inconvenience, it's a warning. In quiet corners of Utah, an uncomfortable pattern has begun. Elders adjusting dosages on their own. Caregivers splitting pills to make them last. Pharmacies no longer saying, "We're out," but instead murmuring, "We might have it by Thursday. Maybe." A tech at a small West Jordan store sighed, "We've stopped promising. We just try to keep people calm." The tension isn't just in the wait. It's in the invisible erosion of routine, the quiet, dependable rhythm that gives people peace of mind. Health is about predictability, and once that disappears, so does security. Especially in a state where long drives, remote towns, and winter roads make every delivery day sacred. Walgreens, Utah's largest pharmacy chain, recently launched its RX Ready system, designed to provide real-time updates on delays and availability. It's a step forward, more honest, more transparent. But it's also a mirror. When updates become necessary for basic medicine, something bigger is broken. If Utah is now waiting a minute too long for medicine, the next state faces a crueler countdown, one not marked by hours or pills, but by the ever-widening space between people and the help they need. What fills that space is not just worry, it's vulnerability. Not every collapse begins with a bang. In Colorado, it comes as a whisper, an eerie quiet in Denver's logistics hubs, where 22% of expected imports sit untouched. Pallets meant for sporting goods, stores are still in sealed containers, and shelves meant to showcase new camping gear now display generic signs. More coming soon. Small businesses in Boulder aren't innovating, they're improvising. Repurposed stock is relabeled as limited editions, not out of creativity, but necessity. Customers don't complain. They ask fewer questions now. Because deep down they feel it too. Something is cracking behind the scenes. The state's pride, its resilience and adaptability, is slowly wearing thin. This isn't panic buying or a crisis headline. It's the slow grind of uncertainty, gnawing at Colorado's ability to prepare, adjust, respond. Not chaos, but hesitation. Not fear, but fatigue. REI and Bass Pro Shops have begun diversifying routes, sourcing through Canadian rail. But cross-border logistics aren't bulletproof, and the delays keep stretching. Even the most scenic backroads can't outrun a jammed port 1,000 miles away. And as Colorado waits, silently watching its supply lines slow, the next state isn't just delayed, it's disconnected. In Spokane, a mother receives a shipping notice. Your package is on its way. Delivery date unavailable. She's not angry. She's not surprised. She just whispers, "I wish someone would tell us what's going on." Because silence, not delay, is what's truly unsettling. Washington has always been a gatekeeper, a hub between Asia and America. But with ship traffic through Tacoma down by 33% in May, the chain is unraveling. The last mile of delivery, the final leg into towns like Everett or Yakima, is now dragging into a 5 to 7 day purgatory. Rural stores display fewer goods. Local logistics companies dodge questions. And the public? They're not panicking. They're retreating into quiet resignation, into wondering if this is the new normal or just the latest tremor before a deeper shake. UPS is rerouting through Canada, crossing back into the US via Montana and Idaho. But the costs have nearly doubled. Retailers must choose between raising prices or offering apologies. Most are doing both. And if a tech-savvy, trade-rich state like Washington can stall without warning, how quickly might the next state vanish from the map without a sound? It didn't take a hurricane or a war, just silence on the Pacific. In May, 90% of Hawaii's inbound goods, once funneled through the port of Los Angeles, stopped arriving on time. It was as if the ocean, once a lifeline, had turned into a wall. Supermarkets in Hilo and Kauai began posting quiet signs. Limit 1 per customer, milk, water, paper products. Resort staff whispered of shortages in towels, cutlery, even coffee filters. But there were no alarms, no headlines. Just a growing sense of abandonment in paradise. Tourists still came, but locals felt the chill. One cashier said, "They look around and wonder what's missing." We do too, but we don't say it out loud anymore. Hawaii's economy, tied tightly to mainland supply chains, now wobbles with each delayed barge. The island doesn't fall apart. It closes in on itself. Not in panic, but in silent, cautious adaptation. Costco and Safeway have announced emergency expansion of 60-day inventory hubs. It's a step, but a temporary one. A patch, not a plan. It wasn't the crash of markets or the scream of sirens. It was the hum that faded. The refrigerated truck that never left the warehouse. The shelf that stayed empty. The package that never arrived. Across 10 states, the quiet has become louder than any breaking news. The port of Los Angeles was never just steel and cranes. It was a heartbeat, a silent pulse that connected farmers to families, patients to medicine, machines to minds. When it falters, it's not just jobs that hang in the balance, it's routine, dignity, and the fragile comfort of knowing tomorrow will look like today. Each state faced the ripple differently. Nevada with dimming lights, Alaska with frozen uncertainty, Hawaii with quiet rations. But beneath the differences, the common thread is clear. The invisible infrastructure we once trusted without question is no longer guaranteed. And yet, there are flickers of resilience. Walmart rail lines, FedEx air bridges, Kroger's local pivot. These aren't full solutions, but signals that adaptation is still possible. That while systems stall, people still move. This isn't about fear, it's about awareness, about understanding how deeply connected we are, to ports, to places, to one another. And in that connection lies both the fragility and the strength of our future. So the question isn't just, what if the port shuts down? It's, what are we ready to open before something closes for good?